Hi, I'm Jeremy, and you're listening to Verse by Verse. Do you limit God? That might seem like a weird question. God is the all-powerful, all-knowing, immortal creator and sustainer of the universe. Nothing is too hard for him. He speaks, and it exists. He declares, and it is done. So how could we, as mere mortals, limit the Almighty God? Well, the Gospel of Mark has a good example of just that. In Mark chapter 6, Jesus and his disciples travel through his hometown of Nazareth. The people there have heard about the incredible miracles Jesus has been doing, but they're skeptical. They watched Jesus grow up. They know his family. How could he be this incredible miracle-working figure they've been hearing about? The account says they actually took offense at Jesus. Who does he think he is, pretending to be someone great when we know his humble origins? And so Mark records in chapter 6 and verse 5, "Now he could do no mighty work there, except that he laid his hands on a few sick people and healed them. And he marveled because of their unbelief." It's not that Jesus was physically incapable of doing a mighty work. It's that he wasn't going to do a mighty work in the middle of such intense unbelief. And so, in a way, the unbelief of the people limited what God would choose to do for them. I wonder how often we do that. How often do we place limitations on what we think God should or shouldn't be able to do? And how often does he choose not to intervene in our lives precisely because we've decided that he can't? We believe he created the universe out of nothing. We believe he can stop the sun and the sky. We believe he can raise the dead. But here's why God can't do anything to help me right now. It's easy to come up with some exception, some reason his miracle-working power can't or won't reach us in our current predicament. Today's verse is about the other side of the coin. It's about what happens when we put aside our preconceived ideas about how things have to work and trust God to do the impossible. Israel was once again being menaced by the Philistines. God had given the people a king to deliver them, but Saul hadn't done much delivering yet. His troops were deserting him, and he wasn't taking action. His son, Jonathan, wasn't concerned about the size of the army. He had a different measurement in mind. Were they here to fight God's battles or not? And if they were, the number of troops involved was completely irrelevant. Jonathan told his armor-bearer to gather up their gear and get ready to fight. They were going to pick a fight with the Philistines, just the two of them. No more waiting around and twiddling thumbs. God was going to deliver his people, and Jonathan was ready to do his part. In 1 Samuel 14, verse 6, I'm reading out of the Net Bible, Jonathan says this to his armor-bearer, "Perhaps the Lord will intervene for us. Nothing can prevent the Lord from delivering, whether by many or by a few." Jonathan knew it didn't matter how many people were behind him or in front of him. God was more than capable of giving the victory to whoever he wanted. Saul could sit and fret over the size of his army all he wanted, but for Jonathan, it was never part of the calculation. He didn't limit God. He didn't have some arbitrary idea of, well, God needs me to have this many people in order for us to win this battle. He just knew that God had sent them to win the battle, and that was enough. God caused such a confusion in the Philistine camp that the Philistines actually started attacking themselves, and Israel claimed a decisive victory against their oppressors. What about us? What limits do we set in our mind on what God is capable of doing for us? What limits do we set on how God is capable of intervening? How many times do we impose our rules and restrictions on the God who is? The people in Nazareth knew Jesus was doing miracles and still refused to believe. Jonathan looked to God for a miracle, even when the smallest scrap of strategic sense would have screamed for him to hang back and keep his head down. But nothing can prevent the Lord from delivering, whether by many or by a few. Sometimes the only thing standing between us and God's intervention is our willingness to trust him and step out in faith. Do you limit God? Are you ready to see what happens when you don't?
Verse by Verse is a Life, Hope, and Truth podcast. Check out the show notes to find more free content, like videos, articles, and booklets in our Learning Center.